Hi everyone, I'm Bren. Welcome to my cottage garden located here in New South Wales, Australia, and I promise it's more than just a giant trampoline. I've got a lot to show you today, including 3 varieties of eggplants or aubergines that are on my must grow list. As well as that, I'll put together a lovely cheerful garden posy, and we'll take a look at how all my new garden beds are coming along. But first, this. Thanks so much for all of your advice last week in the comments about my little worm farm. So last Friday I mentioned to you that I had to go out and buy a booster box of worms and worm eggs because I noticed the population had decreased quite a lot here over winter. It was too cold for a lot of them and they didn't survive, unfortunately. But let me go and show you now a couple of changes that I have made to hopefully keep them more snug and cozy until this weather really starts to warm up in spring. The first thing I did was to move this worm farm to a different location up here against the exterior wall of our house. So these bricks are really great at absorbing the heat from the sun during the day, and the idea is that during the night this heat is slowly released, causing a little bit of a microclimate in this area, keeping the worms a lot warmer than they otherwise would be exposed out in the garden. You also advised me to cover up the worms with some cardboard or paper, keeping it nice and damp like I have done here. This would be like an extra layer of insulation, keeping them warm and also keeping this area nice and dark for them too, which they do like, and it helps encourage them, to come up and eat up all of these food scraps. I'm a little bit annoyed with myself for not taking better care of them over winter time, because during summer I'm constantly checking on them. I'm putting damp towels over the top to keep them cool. I'm making sure the worm farm's in the shade. I'm doing everything possible to look after them, but I kind of lapsed a bit this winter time and I just left them be. I chucked in some food for them and that was about it. I didn't really consider the cold snaps, the light frosts we got. So this is definitely a lesson learned. I need to look after them properly all year round. Okay, let's move on from that. I went and grabbed myself this little jar full of fresh water and my snippers, because guess what? I finally have some beautiful fresh flowers to pick here in the late winter garden. The daffodils have exploded into bloom. Last week there was only around 3 or 4 of these open. Now there are so many of them. Let's go and pick some. I think daffodils are a good investment in the garden because you pay once for a bunch of bulbs, and then what happens is they begin to multiply over the years into many. Now, of course, the ones that are growing here in these pots are new this year. I purchased them, I think it must have been late autumn or early winter, but I do have quite a lot growing elsewhere in the garden that have started to naturalize. Okay, here are the few which I just picked, and you know what? Don't do what I just did. Silly me. I have made a lot of the petals, or at least the back of the petals, dirty because as I was picking them, I put them straight onto the ground, and of course it's quite muddy there still, and it's attached to these very delicate little petals. I need to remember the next time I start picking flowers to have a bucket ready so that I can put them straight into the water. Let's go now and pick the next bunch. I'm trying to get them to turn around to get a good shot, but they're not. Let's go and pick look at them, the next bunch of blooms. Of course, I have to include these absolutely stunning Australian native wattle flowers. I love these flowers so much. They have a huge effect on me. I I get really emotional when I see them starting to bloom again. Their scent is incredible. To me, they're a symbol of new beginnings because they're one of the first flowers to appear here in the late winter garden. They are a symbol of unity in Australia. They're just all round an incredible, incredible bloom. And I feel so fortunate to live here and to be able to experience these this time of year every year. Okay, so I think this should be enough. I've probably overpicked. So you can see here, this is what the flowers look like when they are open. They're like come in these little clusters. And what I also like to do is pick some as well just before the buds begin to open, just for a bit of contrast and hopefully to give this arrangement a little bit of a longer vase life. Popping the stems of the daffodils was easy enough because they're nice and clean, but it's important that, say with these wattles, that I strip the bottom of these stems, because you really don't want any of this foliage sitting in the water. It just causes bacteria to form and it shortens the vase life of the arrangement. So let me go now and just strip off all of the bottoms of these stems like this. It's now a few minutes later and I have finished putting this little garden posy together. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. As you can probably tell, I didn't use all the daffodils. I just stuck with 3 of them and maybe 3/4 of that beautiful wattle flower. It's time to go through now that fruit that I mentioned at the very start of this update. Eggplants or aubergines. First one off is Bonica. I grow these every year. They're a real large oval shape. I find I get 3 to 4 per plant. Next up, Lebanese eggplants. As you can see, they're much smaller than the Bonica. They're long and narrow. I don't really do anything too fancy with these. I like just to simply chop them up and add them into sauces like a ragu. Finally, we're onto a variety of eggplants called Casper. These are so fun to grow. I love growing these because my kids enjoy their appearance and they actually have a milder flavour than the other 2 varieties of eggplants I've just mentioned. This week I created this new approximately 5-metre garden bed. It's very rough and ready. There's no distinct, cut out borders around the bed. I pretty much did my usual, like I always do, lay the cardboard down and put a good few inches of this mushroom compost over the top. I was thinking of planting it up with some of these, which are my spare seedlings. I didn't have anywhere to put them out here in the back garden, so we've got spinach, beetroot, and these are a bunch of cauliflower. I've also got 3 broccolis, lots more bok choy seedlings, lettuce, and a couple of rocket plants. Over in this very chaotic looking area, I am continuously trying to expand these 2 long beds out in the front garden, and I have put some fresh plants in it this week, some of which were a very good bargain, like these 4 marjoram, sweet marjoram plants. Pick them up for $1. This whole section looks empty, but it's not, because underground I have some gladioli corms and lilium bulbs. I've got a few here to show you. So this is what a gladioli corm looks like. I usually pre-sprout these in trays, but this year I was a little bit impatient, so I did put some directly in the ground. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully we won't get any, big frosts, which it seems to be a pretty mild winter here. I mean, it's cold, but not super chilly like past previous years. This is a lilium bulb. Looks a little bit like a clove of garlic. Well, at least that's what I reckon. For anyone interested in buying some, I did purchase these from this company, an online garden supply shop. Now I'm back over at the bed where I planted them, because I want to say one very important tip. Make sure you put these in the ground at the correct depth, because in the past I haven't followed the instructions, and what happens is once these start to grow, they're very top heavy. If you don't have these well anchored into the ground, the plants tend to just flop over. So that's definitely a lesson that I've learned from growing these in the past years. Finally, in front of all of them, I have a few rows of these, which are an orange straw flower. Thank you so much for watching until the end. It is starting to rain and I need to take these clothes in, so I'm going to sign off for now. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead and I'll see you all again next Friday.